So for the first half, let's do a quick concept recap. Okay, so what have we covered 2 weeks before? Last week was a lecture test. So unfortunately, lecture test is lecture test. So I require you guys to dig a little bit deeper. Okay, what was covered 2 weeks back? Okay, you guys can type it out. You guys can, if you want, can unmute. Okay, the faster you all participate, the faster we can end today's session. Yeah? Right, so now, okay, what have we covered 2 weeks back?
The last week was my first class, so I don't know.
Yep, okay, so Alice is exempted, Ravati.
Unemployment.
Okay, great. Okay, so you're carry for the first half lah. Okay, so unemployment. So what have we covered about unemployment? Okay, just be brief. Okay, so for the viewers out there, okay, we have covered unemployment 2 weeks back.
The three types of unemployment.
Alright, so what are the 3 types of unemployment? The types?
Like cyclical, structural, and frictional.
Cyclical, structural, and frictional. Okay, great. Okay, so like I've said, for the viewers out there, if you've missed out, okay, unemployment, okay, I'll attach the card here. Okay, you can catch it up on top. What else? Sorry, Ravati, you got the carry for the first half because Alice is new.
The cost. Consequences.
Consequence.
Yes.
Okay, this one important. Okay, so cause, consequence, concerns of unemployment. Right, I think in our soy question, is it soy 5 or soy 6? There's a similar question about youth unemployment. Okay, so such questions come up quite often. Okay, so make sure you know what they are addressing. Okay, and lastly, we also address policies, right, to address unemployment, briefly only. Agreed? So demand side policies to address cyclical unemployment, supply side policies for structural and frictional. Okay, so I'll go more into the policies in due time. So at the moment, I just need you all to know, okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, as evident in mock exam, okay, we realize that key economic indicators, unemployment rate also can come out, right? Okay, why do we need to know about unemployment? Okay, well, how do we measure that? What is significant about that? Okay, so all this starts to come out as a nice story. All right. Okay, so with this, okay, I would like you guys to prepare your phone. Okay, I will kickstart with a quiz. Okay, I will attach the quiz link, okay, on the Kahoot. Got the Kahoot link on the Zoom. Okay, so join this quiz. Okay, it's not a difficult one. Okay, so just try. Okay, Alice, I think you're new. It's okay, just try. Okay, Ravati, is not difficult. Okay, just try. Clear? Set face, sure. One set, okay, one actual name. Okay, ready? Not ready, also start lah. Okay, so it's not difficult. Okay, I have my assurance. And pay attention to the questions that you get wrong. Okay, we'll address this probably one shot. Right, okay, like I've said, I will address it one shot, so pay attention to the questions that you get wrong. this is a tricky one. Read carefully. Like I said, this is a tricky one. Well, no go. Effects on unemployment and inflation. Well, I'm kind of questioning myself. Are these really difficult? Read carefully. Oh, wow. Well done, at least. You're leading a pack. Trade-off is a widely used term to illustrate opportunity cost. Oh, well done. Or whichever luck comes into play, also good. You still need some luck. Right, well done. Right, work a bit harder, Ravati. Alright, seems like someone who is not happy is leading the pack. Alright, so let's quickly run through the quiz together, yeah? For those questions that you get wrong, okay, please do corrections, take notes, okay, we will address them together. For the viewers out there who are not in my class, if you are unsure of anything, please drop me a question under the comments. So what will cause a movement from XX to YY is the outward shift in your PPC curve, right? So the only criteria that satisfy this has to be an increase in your resource. And therefore, okay, an increase in the labor force will result in greater resources, labor. Okay, this will lead to an expansion of your PPC. So which type of unemployment is associated with a deficient in AD is cyclical unemployment. We have covered this 2 weeks back. Okay, business cycle. And which type of unemployment results from industrial organization due to technological changes? I want you all to pay attention. Okay, whenever there is a change in technology, there's a breakthrough, there's disruptive technology. Okay, it will always lead to. Okay, the banner is blocking. I'm so sorry. The yellow option is actually let me switch back. Okay, maybe I use a smaller face. Okay, the green option. Okay, structural unemployment. Okay, because with every disruptive technology, it will always displace some workers who will not have skill set, okay, to move on to the next job. Okay, so look out for technology changes. Oh, this is the tricky question, just like I mentioned earlier on, right? So what is most likely to be increased by increase in direct tax and lower of government spending? Okay, when there's an increase in direct tax, there will be higher tax revenue. Okay, and there is a lower of government spending, okay, government spends lesser. So cumulatively, these two will cause your budget to be in a surplus, not deficit. So let me repeat. Increase direct tax, you collect more tax revenue, right? Spend lesser, cumulatively, we have a budget surplus. So this is what I mean by tricky. Okay, so increase in direct tax, okay, will result in lower disposable income purchasing power, okay, and lower consumption. Okay, so lower consumption and lower government spending will lead to a lower AD, and this will drive up your level of unemployment. Okay, demand deficient to be more specific. Alright, this question requires you all to imagine a bit. Okay, so how can a change in consumption that increases unemployment be illustrated on AD and AS? So in order for unemployment to happen, AD must shift to the left. Okay, it must shift to the left. Okay, in order for demand deficient to happen. And okay, when AD shifts to the left, okay, I'm probably going to quickly note it down in the blank piece of paper so that you all can visualize faster. Okay, you can join me in this activity. Okay, this is actually back to your micro basics. Okay, this is your general price level, real national income. Right, so this is your AS curve. You realize that only when your AD shifts to the left. I'm not sure why I'm drawing crooked. Maybe my writing pad is crooked, but I hope you guys can see. Okay, you can see that. Okay, this will cause an unplanned inventory accumulation, and this will result, okay, in a downward pressure on your general price level, right? Okay, so from the AS perspective, you can see that this is a movement downwards your AS curve. Okay, so focus on this. So this one is a little bit related to your price adjustment process. Okay, so related to micro. Okay, if you don't get it, it's fine. Okay, it's hardly tested. Okay, so option 6, what are the short run effects? Okay, when there's government spending on education. Okay, so in this case, okay, when there's government spending on education, okay, this is short run AS curve. Okay, so there will not be any long run effects on education. Right, so SRAS will remain the same. So when there is increase in government spending, okay, this will lead to a higher AD. A higher AD will result in higher general price level, okay, and a fall in unemployment rate. Okay, holding your SRAS, your short run aggregate supply curve, the same. Okay, but in the long run, okay, your AS curve will expand, okay, because of greater productivity. All right, so this question is actually the most tricky part. All right, so you can see that this is the unemployment level across the years, and they're supposed to deduce the highest rate of increase, right? So we are supposed to look out for positive relationship or positively slope. Okay, so you realize that when your slope is positive, okay, okay, there are only that few years that exhibits a positive slope. It tells you that there's an increase in your level of unemployment. All right, so you can see that the year between 08 and 10, okay, this is the particular year that experienced the sharpest increase in unemployment. Okay, the slope is the steepest. All right. So just now we actually talked about structural unemployment. So one of the key telltale sign is technology. Okay, disruptive technology. Agreed? So down here, okay, if you were to read carefully, okay, you have to take things as a whole in total. So in the first half, they mentioned that coal mines are forced to close because of consumers switching to less polluting fuels. Okay, so we know that, okay, these coal miners, okay, they will not have, okay, a skill set, okay, to move on to any other, okay, industry, because they have been mining coal for the rest of their life. So if you were to look at the second half, it tells us that there's retraining programs. So look out for retraining programs. Retraining programs are illustrative of supply side policy. They're normally here to correct structural unemployment. Okay, so make sure you learn from this. Okay, don't let this slip. So just not everyone got this right. Okay, so I just quickly run through. Okay, a trade-off means that when one increase, the other decrease. Okay, so you can see that when France experience a fall in inflation rate, unemployment rate goes up. Okay, Japan, likewise, fall in inflation rate, unemployment rate goes up. Okay, so this is what we mean by trade-off. Right, seasonal unemployment, everyone got it right earlier on. It's a change in consumer pattern, right? So for instance, okay, if it is winter, okay, then nobody is going to, or rather when there's winter, nobody is going to go to the ski resort. Okay, and therefore you realize that people who's working in ski resorts, okay, they're going to face seasonal unemployment. Okay, because there's no one spending there. Change in consumer spending pattern. Okay, so with this, I think it's generally okay. Okay, so for those who did not clear the quiz, I make sure you understand what I've been saying. If not, stay back during the break time and ask me. Okay, so with this, I'm going to move on to today's objective. Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know why is it crooked. Okay, maybe I'm still a little bit tired. All right, so with that, okay, I'm going to move on to today's objective. Okay, today we'll be learning balance of payment. Balance of payment. Okay, so for balance of payment, okay, here are some of the things that I want you all to cover. Give me a second. Yep. Okay, so these are the 11 objectives that I have for you all. Right, so balance of payment is the hardest macro goal out of the 4. Okay, so for my year 2 students, okay, please pay attention to this. Okay, the first 3 macro goals, price stability, employment, and economic growth, they're the easier ones. So this one is a bit abstract. But the good thing is, if you are good with numbers, then balance of payment could probably relate to you a bit better. I'm not sure. Okay, we'll see how it goes. Are you all good with math? I'm not talking about what differentiation, integration, no need. It's all logic. It's all about plus and minuses. Okay, so we'll verify that. So today, balance of payment, 11 objectives. Number 1, we'll be looking at the definition and what are the common terms that we use to describe balance of payment. Number 2, okay, just like your unemployment, economic growth, inflation, okay, we have different components, okay, of your balance of payment. Yeah, different sub-accounts that we'll be looking at. Okay, so later on I'll briefly cover that. So item 3 and item 4 are the sub-accounts, current account and capital and financial account. Okay, so for current account, okay, most of the schools use CA here. In fact, all are. Yeah, capital and financial account, KFA. So I'll be using these 2 terms, okay, with effect from now. Okay, I'll illustrate what do we need to know about the current account, what do we need to know about capital financial account. Okay. After that, we'll establish the overall balance to illustrate whether your balance of payments is in a deficit or surplus. Okay, item 6, I will cover these during break time. Okay, so as of now, I think only RI students have a different interpretation of balance of payment. Okay, so Ravati, stay back during the break. No choice. Okay. I don't like to discriminate schools, but your school chose to illustrate balance of payment differently. Okay, so stay back. Okay, so I will be covering causes of disequilibrium. Okay, disequilibrium means that your balance of payment is not balanced. It's not equal to 0. There's a deficit or surplus. Right? Okay, so this one is exceptionally crucial. In your school notes, there will be a lot of causes. Okay, I'm going to go through 1 point each on the current and capital financial account. And later on, moving on, if you have any things you're not sure about your school notes, you can always ask me privately. Yeah, because there's too much content. But I just want you all to get the basics right. What are the important parts? Okay, we'll revisit all this in due time. Consequence. Okay, consequence, concerns, and cost, COST. Okay, it will come in, for BOP surplus and BOP deficit as well. So later on, I will share with you between the two, which one is the better of the two halves. Okay, and which one is more undesirable. Okay, item 10, policies to correct a current account deficit. Okay, so I will briefly illustrate that. Okay, and this is closely related to trade. So I don't like to cover item 10 now, because there are a lot of future concepts that we haven't learned yet. Okay, but I'll just give you the overall arcing framework. Okay, when I cover policies, I'll make sure I'll address item 10 in depth. Okay, and lastly, I'll go through how is it going to be tested in exam. Okay, before we go for a break and our time practice. Clear? Okay, all of you all look quite stoned. Sure, whatever it is, all of you all had your beauty nap. Okay, so all of you should be sufficiently be able to participate. Alright, okay, so I would like you guys to refer to the book. Okay, there are some corrections that I need you to make on the book itself. Okay, I'll let you know quickly. Okay, so page 71. Alright, so balance of payment is the fourth objective. Okay, so it's a simple record or overall statement of all economic transactions between residents of a country and the rest of the world. Okay, so let me repeat again. There are two perspectives: residents of a country and the rest of the world. So we are more concerned about domestic country. So the keyword that you want to insert here is domestic country. Okay, we are looking inwards. Okay, so a healthy balance of payment means that there is no large persistent deficit. Okay, so later on I will go through what is the concept of BOP surplus and deficit. Okay, so if there is persistent large deficits, it means that your BOP is in trouble. Okay, unhealthy balance of payment. Alright, so the whole concept that we are going to be looking out for is the concept of monies. Okay, what I call economic transaction. Okay, so later on, I will go on to elaborate a little bit more from the current and capital financial account. So two things to note here. Okay, number one, when we illustrate balance of payment, make sure you're able to deduce whether BOP is in a deficit or surplus. These are the only two terms that are accepted. Okay, I do not accept increase or decrease, increase or fall. Okay, positive or negative. All these terms are rejected. Only deficit and surplus, strictly. Clear? Alternatively, you can illustrate worsen or improve. Okay, these are the two alternate acceptable terms. So the second thing to look out for is the concept of plus and minus. Okay, so later on I will show you in a short while, why do we need to know plus and minus. Okay, plus, simply is the concept of credit. Okay, net is a debit. Plus is an inflow. Okay, minus is an outflow. Okay, so just quickly jot this down first. Okay, plus is a credit or inflow of monies. Minus is a debit or outflow of monies. Okay, so we are concerned about the overall transactions, means netting off plus and minus. Okay, what is the net inflow or the net outflow of monies? Okay, is everyone clear so far? Just these two, plus, minus, deficit, surplus for now. Good? Alright, I am going to move on to current account, components of BOP. So components of your BOP, okay, let's look at page 88, everyone. Yeah, I know RI covered this already, right? Yeah, Ravati?
A bit only, I
A bit
think.
only. Okay, then I will just touch on the rest. Okay, so for your components, okay, we are looking at your current account, like what I call this is CA, okay, and capital and financial account, KFA. Okay, so when the question tells you that there is a balance of payment deficit, okay, the assumption is always current account deficit. Okay, and to be more specific is the balance of trade deficit, okay, BOT. Okay, so I will cover this field in a short while. So unless otherwise stated, always look out for current account, always look out for balance of trade. Okay, capital and financial account, it can be tested, but it is unlikely a concern for deficit. Okay, it's more of the current account. Okay, but of course, if your school wants to test you on conceptual gap, want to test you on small pocket gap, then they will test you on capital and financial account. If not current account, okay, allocate more time there. Alright, so I want you guys to look out for the first part. Okay, your balance of trade. I want you all to add on this. Okay, visible and invisible trade. Okay, invisible trade below is a typo error. Okay, visible and invisible trade will form your overall balance of trade. So your balance of trade, okay, in a nutshell, is what we consider your better known as X minus M. This one you're familiar, right? Okay, so we are concerned about, okay, the net receipts, okay, from your net exports. How much you sell to the rest of the world versus how much you buy from the rest of the world as a country. Okay, so if a country is selling more goods and services to the rest of the world as compared to what they buy, okay, will that be a net inflow or net outflow? Type it out now. If a country is selling more goods and services to the other countries as compared to what they import from the rest of the world, will this be a net inflow or a net outflow? So this is the first question. That's why I tell you all have to be really concerned or sharp on plus and minus. Will the country be receiving more monies, okay, or less monies? When you sell more. Remember, when you sell to the rest of the world, good, okay, most of your product inflow, okay, so this is a good sign. So when you sell to the rest of the world, okay, there will be net export, there will be export revenue coming in. When you buy from the rest of the world, there will be import expenditure flowing out, right? So in a nutshell, we're looking at the net of the two. If we sell more to the rest of the world, we are going to have a net inflow of proceeds and monies coming in. So be concerned, okay, you have to know what is the plus and minus sign. So in this case, we can consider that our balance of trade will be in a surplus. Okay, if our net exports is in a surplus. Simple enough? So the concept of visible and invisible trade, some of the school use, is not really that important. Okay, visible trade means goods, invisible means services. Okay, in a nutshell. Okay, tangible and intangible. Agree? Okay, so no need to differentiate between visible and invisible trade. Okay, all you need to know is balance of trade, okay, and the direction of the net direction of your goods and net direction of your monies. Okay, so overall we are selling more to the rest of the world, and overall there is going to be a greater inflow of receipts, okay, from the balance of trade. Okay, so your current account consists of your balance of trade. So this is your first sub account. Okay, under current account. Okay, current account, there are 3 sub accounts. I'm going to go through it in order of importance. Right? So the second one is what we call the income balance. So I want you all to cancel invisible trade, okay, and put income balance here. Okay, so this is your second account. Okay, so we are concerned about your rent, interest, dividend, profit. Okay, that's from your overseas investments. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Okay, I just give you an example. Okay, so let's say, okay, there is a foreign firm. Okay, let's say Apple set up a subsidiary in Singapore, right? Okay, do you see that? Apple is from where? Apple is a firm from which country? Do you know the origin of Apple? As in the Apple, United States, right? Okay, so if Apple, okay, who is located in Singapore, a subsidiary of the actual Apple from United States, okay, they open a plant in Singapore, for instance, and they start to remit profits back to United States. Is this an inflow or an outflow? Okay, interest, dividends, profits. Okay, and rent. I forgot to add this too. So when, let me repeat my question. So when a foreign firm is remitting profit out from Singapore to United States, to whichever country, this is a outflow, right? Okay, so the income balance will be worsened. Okay, there will be an outflow. Likewise, okay, we know that there are Singapore firms they are located overseas, right? For instance, Bread Talk. Okay, Bread Talk has a lot of branches in other countries. Let's say Indonesia. Okay, so if Bread Talk Indonesia, okay, the company starts to remit profits back to Singapore, then this is what we call a inflow. Okay, your income balance will be improved. Alright, so this is hardly tested, okay, but it can come out in case studies, especially when they tell you income balance or they tell you any of interest, dividend, profit, and rent. Okay, you got to be concerned about the flow. Okay, and you got to be concerned about, okay, where is the firm? Alright, the last one, okay, is what we call a current transfer. Okay, so remittance fall under current transfer. Okay, so this is the corrections that I want you to put in. Invisible trade, you cancel, you put income balance. Okay, remittance don't fall under income balance. Okay, it falls under current transfers. Okay, so current transfer is one of the least important. Okay, but in modern day context, especially what is happening right now in Ukraine and Russia, it does have a small significance. So one of the components of a current transfer, or what we call a unilateral transfer, is called a government aid. So you see that a lot of countries are providing aids to Ukraine, right? Okay, in the form of loans, in the form of financial aid, in the form of weapons, in the form of whatever. All right. So for remittance, not remittance. Okay, for government aid, if Ukraine is receiving foreign aid, okay, from other countries, okay, then okay, there will be an inflow, okay, in the current transfer side, okay, or unilateral transfer in terms of government aid. Okay, and the country that's providing the aid, United States, France, Europe, okay, there will be an outflow. Okay, so it's always important to look into what perspective you are taking, which country. Okay, another one that is fairly popular is what we call remittance income. Okay, remittance income are remittance income of individuals. Okay, so I'll just give you a good example of what do we mean by remittance income. So, which economic agents are normally involved in remitting income back to their own country? Maybe a helper, right? A foreign helper. We do realize that if you have a foreign helper, they will be always wiring money back, or what I call remitting income back, okay, to their home country, right? Okay, so remittance income, okay, is one of the biggest, okay, account, okay, for current account, especially for countries that export labor. Okay, so Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar. Okay, they realize that, okay, for the current account, the current transfer, okay, there will be a lot of remittance income from their citizens back into their country. Okay, so this will be an inflow, okay, from Philippines, Myanmar, okay, all these countries that export labor. Okay, so there are a lot more. Like I don't think domestic helper is the only economic agent. there are more, right? Okay, maybe construction workers. A lot more lah. Okay, so remittance income. So out of these three, if you happen to conveniently forget whatever Mr. Teo said just now, okay, if you control alternate delete whatever Mr. Teo have said, please don't erase the part on balance of trade. Okay, balance of trade, super duper important. Good. BOT, okay, BOT under current account. So I'm going to move on to capital and financial account. Capital and financial account, unlike current account, is not that complex. Okay, but it can be potentially more complex, okay, if your school choose to play around with the sign, okay, RI for instance. Okay, so stay back later, I will address during the break. Okay, so capital and financial account, we are concerned about the concept of capital or monies. All right. Okay. So the additional concept that you want to be concerned about, maybe I change another color pen, is the concept of time period. Okay. So capital and financial account can be subcategorized to time period. All right. So in the short run, okay, one of the sub accounts that is normally related to capital and financial account is what we call hot monies. Okay, so as the term suggests, hot monies, okay, they are speculative capital. Okay, they are always looking out for assets with higher returns. So the idea of hot money is they never stay in a place long. Okay, they will always go to a place that provides a higher return. So later on, I will illustrate this using interest rate. Okay, and I will recap on this concept of how interest rate, okay, will affect your capital and financial account later on. Okay, but since we are here, I just briefly illustrate. Okay, so I think we did this in one of our soy practices, right? Is it soy 5 or soy 6? Was it? Yes? Do you still remember? Okay, so the whole idea of interest rate, okay, aside of cost of borrowing, is the rate of returns, okay, on your domestic assets. Okay, let's say, okay, if you were to deposit, okay, into Sing dollar assets, okay, if you were to put money into a Singapore bank on your for deposits, they'll give you, okay, it'll give you interest in returns, right? Okay, so you can see that if interest rate goes up, okay, it means that the returns on your Sing dollar assets, okay, your Sing dollar deposits will be higher. Okay, and foreign speculators, okay, they are likely to, okay, they're likely to invest their hot monies, okay, into Singapore, okay, Sing dollar, okay, in view of higher returns. Likewise, if interest rate is relatively lower, okay, there will be a hot money outflow. Okay, so always look out for the concept of rate of return, okay, on your domestic assets. Okay, if the relative returns is relatively higher, there will be an inflow. Okay, likewise, if relative returns for domestic assets is lower, outflow. Okay, hot doesn't stay long. Good. Right, the next one is fairly important as well. It's what we call long-term capital. So the key differentiation between these 2 points, other than time period, okay, is also the level of commitment. Okay, we see that for short-term capital, they're not very committed, right? It's just like a relationship, right? So if you are if you are initial dating, okay, short-term capital is like an open date, right? Are you familiar with the concept of open date? Meaning to say that you can date anyone. Agreed? Okay, without. Okay, so long-term capital is like being married. Okay, so in this case, okay, we can see that when foreign capital comes in, okay, for the long time period, okay, they will invest in domestic assets. Okay, they will buy local factories, they will buy local businesses. Okay, they will take long-term ownership. Okay, and a huge stake in domestic businesses. That's why I consider them long-term and committed. Okay, so when there's an inflow of capital, especially long-term capital, okay, this is what we call, okay, inflow of capital. Likewise, okay, domestic firms or domestic country can also invest in overseas. If we acquire foreign assets, okay, it means that there is an outflow of your capital. Okay, so this is a capital outflow. So we are looking at the net between both. All right, so okay, how much capital is coming in to acquire domestic assets and how much capital is flowing out to acquire foreign assets. Okay, and in the future, we probably will encounter one of the practice questions that asks you to talk about what are the determinants of FDI. Okay, but it is not the time for now. Okay, so I will just quickly skip here. Okay, so in a nutshell, how do we want to differentiate short run and long run? Okay, time period and the level of commitment. Okay, remember, hot money is never committed. Okay, anytime there is someone more attractive, then, okay, sayonara. Okay, I'll break up with you. I'll go for another date. Okay, long-term capital cannot happen. Okay, long-term capital will be stuck in a marriage. Okay, so I hope this is a good example. Okay, and I'm going to move on to the next. Okay, causes of, okay, equilibrium. Okay, so let's look at page 88, equilibrium. Everything is at page 88 actually. Okay, equilibrium occurs when there is net inflow and net outflow. Net inflow equals to net outflow. Okay, so your overall balance, okay, will be, okay, equals to 0. Okay, so this is what we call your balance of payment. Okay, your balance of payment is in the equilibrium. Okay, it's equals to 0. Okay, when your net inflow is equals to your net outflows. Okay, so we are concerned about these two. Okay, your current account and your capital and financial account. Okay, so if your current account, okay, especially your balance of trade, okay, we are experiencing, okay, a surplus in your balance of trade. Can you tell me what is your current account going to be, plus or minus? When there's when your balance of trade is in a surplus, when you're selling more goods to the rest of the world, plus or minus? Okay, plus, right? Okay, what about hot monies? Let's say, okay, if there is let's say for Singapore, there's a higher returns on Singapore currency, Singapore assets. Okay, what can we conclude about the capital and financial account? First of all, there will be hot monies will be affected, right? We mentioned that earlier on. So will there be an inflow of hot or outflow of hot monies? Okay, when Singapore assets are more desirable. Okay, so we can see that cumulatively this will lead to, okay, a balance of payment surplus. So sometimes it's not that straightforward. Sometimes one go plus and one go minus. Okay, if they go in opposing direction, then we need to look at, okay, the size, okay, of each of these. Okay, we need to look at which one is bigger, okay, in order to have, okay, an informed idea of what's going to be your overall balance. Okay, and current account can also be can also be outflow. Okay, so it really depends on what the extract gives you, but you have to be very quick to ascertain, okay, whether is it a surplus or a deficit. Okay, you must be able to tell quickly. Okay, case studies, they like to show you exports and imports. Okay, then you need to calculate, okay, what is your balance of trade. Okay, and how does it, what is the overall position of your balance of payment? All right, so far so good. So I've mentioned earlier on, okay, most of the schools emphasize on a plus here. Okay, later on for selected schools, okay, who uses a minus, okay, I will go through this right at the end during the break. Okay, and please stay back, okay, if your school uses a minus. Okay, so for the viewers out there, if you're not sure whether it's plus or minus, check your school notes. Okay, if you are schoolless, okay, then check with Mr. Teo. Mr. Teo like plus. Mr. Teo don't like to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so plus is important. So someone asked, is the minus balance this equilibrium? No. Okay, like I've said, whether we want to find out this equilibrium or not, we need to look at these two as a whole. Okay, so when these two is balanced, okay, the plus and the minus balance out one another is in an equilibrium. Okay, but if it is overall more plus or overall more negative or more minus, then we can say that your BOP is in a disequilibrium. Okay, when your BOP is in a disequilibrium, okay, it goes back to what we have covered earlier on, okay, which is a BOP surplus or a deficit. Okay, and it is hard to say whether which one is better or worse. Okay, it depends on what context you take. I will go on to show you what are the consequences in a short while. Okay, so this equilibrium, it simply tells you that it's a surplus or deficit, but it does not mean that it's good or bad. Okay, we need to look deeper. Clear? Questions? All right, causes of disequilibrium. Okay, let's look at page 89. I'm going to cover 1 point each. I'm going to cover the first point. Okay, so your school notes, okay, will have quite a long, inexhaustive list of factors that cause your current account to be in deficit, current account to be in surplus, capital and financial account to be deficit or surplus. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Okay, okay, all you need to know, okay, is the important first 2 to 3 points. I think it's good enough. Don't memorize, just understand them. Okay, I'm going to show you one of the few that are important, and along the way, I will actually cover a little bit more. Okay, especially when I move on to exchange rate, monetary policy. Okay, I will show you more. All right, so the first one, okay, you can see that it is cyclical changes in global demand. All right, so you can see that business cycles in Singapore and her partners affect her trade balance. Economic boom or recession, right? So, okay, how can we play around with this? Okay, I'm just going to put this into words. So we want to see, okay, for we want to take perspective either from Singapore or the rest of the world. It's about relative income. All right. So now let's build step by step. Okay, so for Singapore, okay, if Singapore were to experience a higher income, okay, let's see. Okay, what can we deduce about Singapore on its current account? So number one, when Singaporeans are richer, okay, they will have higher purchasing power, right? And higher demand for imports. Okay, and when there is a higher demand for imports, okay, this will cause your current account to be in a surplus or deficit. Type it out now. When Singaporeans are buying or acquiring more imports. Okay, so your X minus M will be in a deficit, right? Okay, balance of trade, okay, will be in a deficit. That's why I say it's important to take a look at perspective. Okay, so a same factor can have opposing direction on a country's current account. I'm going to show you how it is going to play around. Now, for the rest of the world, what happens when the rest of the world experience a rise in income? Likewise, they are going to experience an increase in purchasing power, right? Okay, and they are going to increase demand for Singapore imports. So demand for Singapore imports on the other end, okay, will result in higher demand for exports from Singapore. Agreed? So when other countries are demanding more imports, okay, especially from Singapore, if you were to take another perspective, it means that Singapore is selling more to the rest of the world. Okay, so we can see that what's going to happen to your X minus M here? Okay, which one will be higher? And there's a higher demand for Singapore imports. We are looking at Singapore perspective from the rest of the world. Okay, so there will be a higher export receipts that we sell to the rest of the world. Then balance of trade will improve. So this is just one illustration, okay, of how it affects, okay, your one factor affecting, okay, your balance of trade. Okay, and especially is one similar factor somehow. So always look deeper into what is the cause. Is it foreign or is it domestic? Especially balance of trade. Okay, there's always two parties. They are playing. They are like dancing. It's like tango. One step forward, the other step back. Okay, you have to look at these two together. All right. Okay, so I'm going to move on to. So there are a lot more other factors in your current account. Okay, like I've said. Okay, if you encounter them and you're not sure, please ping me. Okay, take a snapshot and send to Mr. Teo. Mr. Teo will explain to you. But they are too long, okay, and they are very dry. I don't want to cover very dry concepts. But I want you to emphasize current account very important. Okay, so make sure you know at least 3 down here. Okay, capital and financial account, not so much. Alright, so earlier on, okay, I have addressed interest rate. Okay, interest rate will actually cause your capital and financial account to be in a deficit or surplus. Alright, so the whole concept is the idea of rate of returns, relative rate of returns. Okay, so if the domestic country has a lower relative returns, okay, then speculative fund will find other countries relatively higher. So there will be an outflow. Likewise, okay, if Singapore assets are more attractive, higher returns, inflow. Okay, so this is the primary number one concern for capital and financial account to be in a deficit or in a surplus. Okay, interest rate. Okay, I'll cover more of this in depth. Okay, when I move on to monetary policy. Okay, so rate of returns. ROR means rate of returns. Okay. So with this, okay, I am going to move on to consequence. Okay, page 90 and 91. Okay, let's look here. Page 90 and 91. So some of the students are asking me, okay, which disequilibrium is worse off or better off? I think just now one of you all asked, right? Okay, what causes a BOP disequilibrium? Okay, so it's either a surplus or deficit. So which one is, so if you were to weigh out, okay, which one would you likely to incur as a country? Are you better off with a BOP deficit or BOP surplus? Which one do you think is better off? Maybe Ravati, would you like to try? Yeah, unmute.
Surplus.
Okay, why is that so?
Oh no, it seems better to have more money than less money.
That's common sense, right? Yeah, so it's always better to have more monies than less monies. Okay, so the whole idea is we do not want to have a persistent large surplus. Okay, we also don't want to have a persistent large deficit. But if we are stuck with these two rotten things of a persistent large surplus and a persistent large deficit, then persistent large surplus is relatively better. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you what are some of the benefits and what are some of the consequences of a surplus. Okay, so one of the most common benefits that you will see, okay, is actual growth, okay, and falling unemployment. Why? Because surplus, BOP surplus that's caused by a current account or the balance of trade surplus means that your X minus M is greater than 0. Okay, AD is going to go up. Okay, so this is very clear sign that, okay, your economy is going to expand. There will be actual growth. Okay, and sometimes when there is a presence of foreign direct investment, okay, they will not only bring their capital, they will bring their technology. Okay, the transfers of technologies, okay, is going to result in potential growth. So this is a concept that we will be learning under globalization as well. Okay, when there is capital flow. Right, so this is good, not too bad. Agreed? But what happens if we have too much surplus? See, too much. Everything too much, you'll get stomach ache, right? Go to buffet, eat too much, you get stomach ache. Same thing here. And what happens when there is too much? When our spare capacity is exhausted, then we experience demand pull inflation. Okay, if we shift too much to the right side. And sometimes, okay, this will result in retaliation. Why? Because, okay, in trade, especially in balance of trade, you realize that what one man's surplus is another man's deficit, right? Does it make sense to you now? Okay, all your surpluses must come from some other countries. Some other countries must be incurring a deficit to finance your surplus. Agree? Okay, so this might relate to the concept of what we call unfair trade practices. Some of the countries will say that, hey, this country, maybe they adopt unfair trade practices. We will cover more of this when we move on to term 2 under trade. Okay, maybe this country is undervaluing their currency. Okay, maybe this country is providing export subsidy, whatever. Okay, and this is going to give the domestic country an unfair advantage in their domestic production. Okay, so this might invite retaliation through protectionist means. Okay, so I'll cover more of this, okay, when I cover trade, international trade. Okay, but to sidetrack, something that has been very recent these days, okay, you can actually see that a lot of countries are actually engaging in protectionist measures on Russia. I don't know whether you guys actually recognize this. Okay, they all read the news that a lot of Russian goods are actually removed from international supermarket, right? Why? So let's play around with this idea. Okay, so what happens when Russian goods are not allowed to be sold on international market? Okay, what is going to happen to X minus M for Russia? When there's a ban on Russia imports, what's going to happen to X minus M? Okay, X decreases, right? Holding import the same. Okay, let's say and people are actually going to block Russian goods to be sold to the rest of the world. Okay, this will become 0. So we can conclude that the balance of trade for Russia is going to be in a balance of trade will be in a deficit, right? Later on we'll find out what are the consequences of a deficit. Okay, so protectionist means is used to punish countries. Okay, and we can see what form of punishment. This is just an example of how a punishment can work. Okay, it's not a good time to be in Russia now. Okay, I'm going to show you here. Okay, so there's a typo here. Can you cancel this and put rising unemployment? Okay, for page 91. So we can see that a lot of countries are not only engaging in protectionist means against Russia. On paper, they call it sanctions, right? You see the word sanctions. Okay, but if you were to learn trade or international trade in term 2, okay, these are just means of protectionist measures. They are all economic means. Okay, we will have a deeper interpretation when we move on to term 2. But on top of that, we can also see that a lot of firms, especially foreign firms, okay, are they coming into Russia or are they exiting Russia? Foreign firms. What happens to FDI? Okay, would you want to set up a plant in Russia now? So if you are a foreign firm who have set up a plant in Russia, would you want to stay or would you want to leave? You probably want to go, right? Okay, so what can we conclude about the balance of payment? Which account will be affected? Okay, it's always good to deduce step by step. We have something that is seen in a case study. We need to know what concept. Okay, so the concept is current or capital and financial account. So we notice that when there is an outflow of FDI in Russia, okay, so which account will be affected? Okay, the capital and financial account will be affected, and this will be registered as an outflow, okay, in the capital and financial account. Okay, it's a massive outflow. So we can see that the overall balance of payment in Russia is not good now. Agreed? Okay, current account deficit, capital and financial account deficit. Okay, is the outflow short term or long term? Just like I mentioned, okay, FDI is long term. See, long term. Okay, so most of the foreign firms, they will sell their Russian assets. Hopefully there's a buyer and they want to retract everything and want to go back to their own country. Why? Because there's pessimism in Russia, right? No countries wants to deal with Russia. Okay, anything that has Russia inside, okay, is like a rotten, it's like a corpse, right? Very smelly. Agreed? So the outflow will be long term. Now, okay, let's observe what will happen. Okay, so we see that no countries wants to deal with Russia. Russia is going to sell lesser exports. X minus M will be negative. Balance of trade will be in a deficit. Okay, outflow of foreign direct investments. All this is going to result in a contraction of AD. AD is going to fall to the left. Then in terms of macro goals rise, okay, we can see that fall in actual growth. Okay, and rise in unemployment. Okay, so some of the governments may want to correct their balance of payment deficit by selling their assets, okay, their country assets. Okay, but if you put yourself into Russia's context, nobody wants to buy Russian assets. Right? Even if you sell dirt cheap, nobody wants to buy, okay, because it's no longer a matter of profitability. Okay, it's a matter of humanitarian and politics. Okay, so external debt, okay, cannot be created now. Too bad for Russia. Okay, and Russia, okay, will eventually run out of foreign reserves, okay, to finance their balance of payment deficit. Okay, and you can actually see that, okay, what is the consequence of running down on your reserves? Okay, your reserves is primarily used to defend your exchange rate. See? Okay, or to keep your exchange rate stable. So we can see that the Russian ruble has collapsed 80% already. Right, so in a nutshell, it's not good to be in Russia right now. Okay, everything is not happening for Russia. I think this is a timely crisis to cover balance of payment. All right, so for students who are interested to find out more, okay, later on during the break, okay, I will also I forgot. Okay, there is a show in Korea, okay, that actually illustrates the financial crisis in 1998. Okay, is a Korean show on balance of payment. Hey, imagine an entire 2-hour movie that's shot on balance of payment. Would y'all watch that? Honestly, it's actually quite good. Honestly. But you need subtitles. I couldn't understood, but I mean, after learning balance of payment and having some economics background, I could understand what happened to the Asian financial crisis in 1998. Yeah, I think you guys were, what are your ages? Were you all born in 98? Not yet, right? Back in 98, I was still in primary school. But back then, Singapore was really hit very hard. Yeah, there was a period of real bad hardship. Yeah, everyone is in real bad shape. Okay, I'll send you all the link. It's actually quite a good movie. All right. Okay. So let me know if you guys can appreciate that after watching. All right. So these are some of the consequences of balance of payment deficit. So if you were to weigh out, balance of payment surplus has certain benefits. Okay, but it is about striking a balance. We don't want persistent large surplus. Okay, if not, we'll have demand pull inflation. Okay, we will have jealousy from our trading partners. Okay, whereas a deficit is a clear no-go. Alright, I am going to move on to the policies to address balance of payment deficit. Okay, so like I've said earlier on, okay, this is not the time to cover balance of payment deficit policies, but I just want you all to have awareness, okay, to correct balance of payment deficit. Okay, I'll build the awareness part. Okay, in the future lessons, I will cover in depth, okay, how are the respective policies going to tackle balance of payment. Alright, so most of the time, like I've said, okay, the assumption of a balance of payment deficit comes from which account? What is the biggest account that attributes to balance of payment? Okay, current account or your balance of trade, right? So we are essentially concerned about correcting a balance of trade deficit. Okay, so the policies that we'll be using here, unlike what we have learned in the earlier macro goals, we learned about expansionary and contractionary policies. Okay, all this will not be the correct terminology. Okay, so there are three main branches that you want to jot this down. Okay, the first one is expenditure reducing policies. Okay, the second one will be expenditure switching. Okay, and the third one, okay, would be supply side policies to promote, okay, export competitiveness. Okay, so generally, okay, 1 and 2, okay, 1 is working on reducing imports. Okay, 2 is working simultaneously on promoting exports and reducing imports. Okay, there's a switching effect, switching imports, okay, to domestic consumption. Okay, and the last one is promoting domestic exports. Okay, so I just briefly touch on these three. I will not go in depth. Okay, I will cover this. Expenditure reducing policy, I will cover this when I cover monetary and fiscal policy. Expenditure switching will be exchange rate and some of the trade practices. Supply side policy will be supply side policy. Okay, I'll cover this in due time. Okay, I just want you all to know these three broad branches to describe. Clear? Alright, so for exam purpose, okay, I would like you all to, the first point is the most important, differentiating between BOP and budget deficit. Whenever I say this, a lot of students will still get it wrong, no matter what. Okay, so in a nutshell, balance of payment deficit, okay, we are normally concerned about your balance of trade deficit, X minus M. Budget deficit or budget position, we are concerned about the difference between your tax revenue and government spending, T and G. Okay, so X minus M is broadly categorized as your external balance. T and G, your budget is considered your internal balance. So there are two different concepts. Okay, so please don't get it mixed up. Don't label BOP as budget as BOP. Okay, I'll flush your script down the toilet. Okay, causes of BOP and current account deficit. Okay, just now I briefly covered that already. There are a lot. Okay, I just want you all to focus on the current account. Okay, one of the causes that I covered was change in global income and change in domestic income. Right, consequences of BOP and current account deficit. Okay, so earlier on we mentioned that balance of payment deficit, okay, is more undesirable than surplus. Okay, so like what Ravati has mentioned, it's always better to have more than less, And policies to correct. Okay, the three broad ones are expenditure switching, expenditure reducing, and supply side policies. All right, so with this, okay, I will be covering the less covered approach on the minus sign. Okay, so if your school is using the minus sign, okay, for overall balance, you can stay back. Okay, I'll explain briefly. It's not important, won't be tested, but if your school uses this, I need to explain. Okay, if not, okay, for the rest of the students who doesn't use the minus sign, can go for your break. Okay? Okay, so at least you can go for your break. Right? Okay, so now, okay, for the minus sign, some of the schools use minus sign. Ravati, pay attention. Yeah, do you know why they use minus sign? Was it covered in your school?
I haven't watched the lectures yet.
Okay, so I cover now. So probably when you watch the lectures, you won't be confused. Okay, so in Ace Your Econs, AYE, we use positive. We use a plus. Okay, so some of the schools use minus. Why is it minus? Okay, when we look at plus, okay, we are looking at money's flow. Okay, when we look at minus, okay, we are looking at asset flow. So the concept is fairly straightforward. You can actually turn around them pretty quickly. So what is an asset flow? So for instance, okay, if foreign firms, okay, are acquiring domestic assets, right? So this is a asset inflow or outflow for the domestic country.
Outflow.
It's an asset outflow, right? That's why it's a minus. Okay, but an asset outflow on the other end means that there is capital inflow. Make sense? Okay, so an asset outflow, if you know simple mathematics, when you subtract an asset outflow, minus will give you plus. This is how you convert asset flow to capital flow. Simple? So in a nutshell, okay, it's not important, but you need to know what your school is covering. Your school use asset flow, then stick to asset flow. But at the end of the day, okay, if you're not comfortable with asset flow, okay, just change it back to capital flow. Most of the other schools use capital flow, not asset flow. Why are you learning this? Okay, you have to ask IMF. Okay, IMF decided to change its accounting policies a couple of years back. Okay, and you guys are the unfortunate bunch get to learn this. Okay, so with this, okay, you can go for your break. When you are back, okay, we kickstart with the TP, can? Right, thanks for coming back. At least when you're back, you can turn on your webcam. Thanks. Okay, so this is an essay question, and it's customary that I always ask my students, would they need help? Do you all need help for this question? Or you want to try yourself? If you all need help, then I will give you an outline. If you all don't need help, then we will proceed. Then you will find out how you all have done, just like an exam. How, help or not? I'm gonna give you all 5 seconds to decide. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Decision? Cannot wait forever. Just step out lah, help or not? Quick. What is maybe? I don't know. Okay, I'll help. Because this question is really hard. I'll just give you all a few simple pointers, 3 hints. Okay, the first hint, okay, is to look out for the concept of oil consumers and oil companies. Right? So for oil consumers and oil companies, they will be affected differently with higher oil prices. How do we relate this to balance of payment of a country? Okay, so we can see that for oil consumers, okay, the better interpretation of oil consumers would be what we know as oil importing countries. Oil companies will be known as, or oil producing nations, as is highlighted here, will be known as oil exporting countries. Okay, so this is the first perspective that you want to take. Oil importers versus oil exporters. Okay, I'm running short in space. Maybe I will use here. Okay, oil importers or oil importing countries. Okay, and oil exporting countries. So with this, we want to see how a sustained increase in the price of oil is going to affect. Okay, what are the accounts? What are the accounts again for balance of payment? What are the 2 accounts? CA, KF. Someone made me hungry. And not KFC, KFA. Maybe I'll get KFC later for dinner. CA and KFA. So I'm going to solve one part for you all first. Okay, and you all will decide. Okay, what are the remaining 3? So now, okay, for oil exporting countries, okay, what can we conclude about their current account? Okay, or their balance of trade? What will happen to X minus M? Suddenly so quiet. Okay, so X minus M, okay, your export revenue, your net exports is going to go up, right? Okay, so holding import the same, okay, we can see that there's an increase in your Okay, can we deduce that there's an increase in your export revenue? Yes? So how does it happen? How can we tie up these two concepts together? Okay, so this is the last tip already. Second tip is to break down into all the respective components. Tip 1, to break down the two countries. Tip 2, break down the respective components. Tip 3, okay, you got to use a concept to relate these two. How does an increase in price of oil increase the export revenue? We learned this in the first year. What concept is this? Okay, Ravati, good. So, oh, you seem to be shocked, but yes, okay, this is the concept that's tested. So based on the concept that you have typed, okay, what can we deduce about the value? Alright, so the concept that we want to look out for is price elasticity of demand for oil. Okay, so and to be more specific, we are looking at, okay, the concept is pricing strategy. Okay, I covered this in the earlier first year program last week. Okay, what should we do? Okay, to goods. How do we price goods? Okay, this is the reverse application. Okay, under what circumstance, okay, will you experience a higher revenue, okay, with higher oil prices? This is a related concept that's related to pricing strategy. So my question to you guys is, since we all deduce that PD of oil has to be assumed, okay, what do we need to assume here? And it doesn't help when my dog is keep scratching on my door. I want to kill. Okay, demand for oil is price demand inelastic. Why? Okay, we need to use a specific PANT. Okay, so look out for your book. Okay, one of this. Okay, normal good, I don't think is there. Okay, necessity good, great. Or you can relate to lack of available substitutes also can. These two works really well. Okay, there is no substitutes for oil, or there is great necessity. Okay, so either of these, okay, you can establish that PD of oil is inelastic. Therefore, when there's an increase in price, quantity demanded for oil will reduce less than proportion. And this will increase your export revenue. Okay, then your current account will improve. Balance of payment will improve for exporting countries. Okay? So this is the missing link, everyone. I give you all 3 hints already. So I want you all to continue to build the other 3. Yeah? Try. So with this, I'm going to give you all 15 minutes. Okay, when you're ready, your time starts now. Start writing. Right, time's up. Stop writing. So thank you for joining me in the time activity. I'm going to close the timer, and I'm going to attach the answer key, okay, on the group chat. All right, so I will be going through this right now. You guys can take down corrections. I'm so sorry that you have to hear that. Was it very loud? Yeah, because she was just beside me and then my mic captures everything. So I'm really sorry for the viewers out there who actually have to experience that. Yeah, it wasn't intentional. That's why, sometimes it's a hazard to have a pet beside you when you're working. But anyways, okay, I've attached the answer key. Okay, so for my actual students in class, remember to take down corrections, and at the end of the session, I would like you to turn in your script immediately. Okay, so I will not be reminding, okay, turn in immediately. Okay, by 7 o'clock, if I don't receive your script, okay, you will get a 0 for the script. Okay, I can track all your submission timing. Clear? Alright, so with this, okay, I will go through the answer together. Okay, let me know if you guys can see the answer key on the group chat. If not, the answer key will be reattached. Okay, will be activated on Sunday on the LMS. Okay, I'm just putting it, okay, on the group chat for all of you to see earlier. Okay, so I've given you the 3 important tips. Okay, so with this, okay, let's see how the tips are going to turn out to. Strangely, the throat doesn't quite agree with me today. Okay, so define what is balance of payment. Okay, you want to identify the components of balance of payment, which is your current account and capital and financial account. Net error and omission I didn't cover earlier on. This is one of the smallest account that is not important. Okay, you can omit this if your school didn't cover. Okay, as a good practice, you would like to define, okay, what is current account, okay, what is your capital and financial account, and you want to look into the categories of oil exporting and oil importing countries. Okay, at the very least, okay, your introduction paragraph should tell me the definition for balance of payment, which is what we have learned earlier on, and you should be able to tell me what are the profiles of the country based on the preamble. Oil importing and oil exporting countries. So there are some things that's not necessary here. It's good to have, but not necessary. I want you all to check. Okay, so for oil importing countries, a sustained oil price will be detrimental or affect its BOP negatively. So how can we conclude that? Okay, remember, okay, the same assumption for PED can be made for oil importing countries. Right? So oil importing countries will experience PED being price demand inelastic due to nature of a necessity good. Or you can talk about lack of reliable substitutes. Okay, crude oil has no reliable substitutes. And oil importing countries will have to spend more on oil products, importing oil products, and worsening the current account. So the concept that we want to use here, okay, would be, okay, a demand diagram. And you want to illustrate when there's an increase in price of crude oil, when your demand is sufficiently price demand inelastic, increase in price will lead to a less than proportional decrease in quantity demanded. And okay, we can see that, okay, your initial revenue will be A and B. Okay, I'll box them in blue. Sorry, initial spending. The area under your demand curve can show 2 things. Okay, you can either show your revenue or you can show your consumer spending. Okay, so they will work out to be the same in this context. Okay, so the blue rectangle, okay, will be what? Okay, will be your consumer spending initial. The green one, okay, will be your consumer spending final. Okay, so we can see that the green rectangle is bigger than the blue rectangle. Okay, so as a rule of thumb, whenever you want to illustrate spending or revenue, elasticities, I recommend this diagram. Okay, you show this diagram, okay, and you can use areas to represent spending and revenue. Okay, so you can see that oil expenditure, okay, to buy oil from oil exporting countries will rise from AB to AC. Okay, the long run variation is not necessary. Okay, this is optional. Okay, but in a nutshell, it tells you what happens to the current account in the long run. I already attached the answer key in the Zoom under the chat function. Don't need to take picture. It's already the answer key is there. Have or not? Don't have under the chat function. It's already there. Don't need to take picture. Yeah. So if you don't have, just let me know. I'll make sure all of you have. Okay. Just listen to me. Okay. So like I've said, optional. Okay, in the long run, okay, all importing countries will experience a worsening of the current account. Okay, improvement in the current account, sorry. Why? Okay, this is where your PED becomes price elastic. So you realize that in the long run, okay, the consumers, they are able to find a reliable source of other reliable forms of energy. For instance, okay, they can change, they can reduce their reliance on oil. Okay, PED is going to be greater than 1. Then we can reverse the initial deficit in the current account. Okay, so like I've said, this is optional. I don't need this, but it's good if you have. No extra credit will be given. But the effects on capital and financial account is important. Okay, so we can see that persistent high oil prices will lead to a few things. Number one, cost push inflation in oil importing countries. And okay, for foreign direct investments, okay, would you like to invest in a country that is susceptible to inflation and lower profitability? You don't want, right? Okay, but because of high oil prices, this will drive out your production costs for oil importing countries. Then in that case, okay, there will be a fall in foreign direct investment, a worsening of your capital and financial account. So this is how you want to connect between high oil prices and capital and financial account. Okay, you want to relate to foreign direct investments. If you understood my perspective on oil importing countries, oil exporting countries will be the reverse. Okay, just now I actually covered in the outline, right? Oil exporting countries will be better off. Using the same analogy, right? One man's gain is another man's loss. For oil importing countries, they will incur a higher expenditure. Oil exporting countries, okay, will gain from the oil importing countries with higher oil prices using the same approach. Okay, higher oil prices, okay, oil exporting countries will experience a gain in revenue from AB to AC. Okay, so the entire illustration is the same. Okay, so this is the short run approach. Okay, this is short run, Okay, so if you develop the oil importing countries already, then you don't need to spend a lot of time to redevelop here because it's the same. Okay, you can just afford to illustrate improvement in your current account with higher export revenue. Okay, so the long run, I'm going to box this, is going to be optional. So earlier on, under oil importing countries, we have deduced that in the long run, consumer pattern will change. They will develop substitutes to oil, okay, like solar, nuclear, hydro, whatever energy. Likewise, in the long run, oil exporting countries will face competitors. Okay, especially consumers will develop other sources of reliable source of energy. Okay, you'll get used to using them. And therefore, okay, with higher oil prices, your PED being elastic in the long run, okay, your current account will worsen. Okay, optional. So the hardest to develop is always a capital and financial account. Okay, you need to make certain key assumptions here. So how can we deduce about capital and financial account for oil exporting countries? Okay, we realize that for oil exporting countries, you realize that it's going to be very profitable in the crude oil business, right? Selling crude oil will be very profitable, very lucrative. Okay, and therefore this is likely to attract investments related to crude oil activities. Okay, there will be more oil exploration, okay, more oil drilling, okay, more oil activities in these countries. Okay, so people, firms like ExxonMobil, BP, okay, will invest in these countries, set up oil rigs. Then this will lead to a strengthening of your capital and financial account due to higher foreign direct investments. Okay, so generally, okay, the current account and the capital account should go in the same direction. They should sing the same song. Okay, if your current account improves, your capital and financial account is likely to improve. Okay, likely. All right, I'm going to go through some of the observations. Okay, definitions and the identifying of the respective accounts are not there. Okay, so you need to identify all importing and all exporting countries before you can have a more meaningful discussion. Okay, so the minimum requirement is to illustrate the effects on the current account. Okay, if you want to score a little bit more, capital and financial account. Okay, short run, long run variation is not required. Okay, and how do we know PED is required? Number one, prices of oil. Number two, oil being the role of being an important role, right? You use oil on a daily basis as a necessity. So I want you all to be extremely sensitive to keywords such as oil. Okay, so oil, prices, and BOP is normally, we look at current account, we look at X minus M, right? Export revenue. These three concepts will point out that PED is an important assumption. If you don't bring in PED, okay, you won't score the credit in the current account. Okay, and some of the students, okay, when they panic, they throw in AD and AS. This question is not about macro goals. It's not about actual growth. It's not about unemployment. If you throw in AD and AS, okay, you are going to throw your essay away. Okay, so go straight into CA and KFA here. Okay, so with this, okay, I am done for today. If you have further questions for me, please stay back and ask. Okay, for the viewers out there, if you do not have direct access to me, leave your comments in the chat function. Okay, and I am going to sign off in a while.